Good evening and welcome to this edition of the In Focus Candidate Forums on Whitewater Community Television, WGTV, Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director, and glad to be host of this particular show and all of our In Focus programs, and glad that you're able to join us. I hope you find this hour and a half informative. If you have questions, we'll be putting up a number where you can do that. This is also on Facebook Live and Twitter, so you can make comments, and you can also send questions through Twitter as well as via the phone number that you see there on the screen. We appreciate the candidates being here. A couple of things to remind you. First of all, if you are not registered to vote, we do urge you to go ahead and get that done. The deadline for voter registration is coming up on Monday, April 9th. You can do it in person at the Wayne County Courthouse on the second floor, or for ease of handling, you don't even have to go there. You can do it online, indianavoters.com. You see the number there if you need more information, 765-973-9304. Even if you're not planning on voting in the primary, get registered now. You'll be ready in the general election in the fall. So voter registration ends on Monday. This week we have Democrat candidates running for District 6. Next week, Tyler Vanderpool will be your host for the In Focus Candidate Forums as we talk to candidates running for state representative, District 54 and 56, two candidates in each of those districts. They're all running for state representative, so we've invited them all in at one time to answer your questions as well as those of Tyler and whoever is sitting in with him next week. We think we might have a representative from the Western Wayne News, so we'll see how that works out. Following week, what some people are considering one of the big races locally, Wayne County Sheriff. There are 3 candidates running for Wayne County Sheriff, and those candidates have all agreed to be here on April 19th. They will also be here for 90 minutes, so hopefully you can tune in. And again, your questions are welcome. And then our final one, April 26th, candidates for Wayne County Council District 3, 2 candidates running for that seat. And they do have a challenger already for the fall, but for the primary, 2 Republican candidates are running for that seat. You'll be able to ask them questions. That show will go the normal time that an In Focus show goes, and that is 1 hour. Then, of course, we'll be here on election night, May 8th. We'll start at 6 o'clock. I'll be joined by Melissa Vance, President and CEO of the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. She'll join me for however long it takes for us to get all of the Wayne County votes in and be able to tell you, at least in Wayne County, who the winners are and those that will be moving on to the general election. So with that taken care of, let's get tonight started. First of all, I want to thank the candidates that were able to make it. Not all of them were able to be here. There are 2 more candidates. You saw their names in the beginning who were not able to come. They had prior engagements. But with us, Mr. George Holland, Jeannine Lake, Jim Pruett, and Joshua Williamson. Representing our partners with this, the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce, Sayward Salazar is here with us this evening. It's going to be a long night, I'm telling you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to start by giving the candidates about a minute and a half or so, uninterrupted, just to give you an idea of who they are, just in case you have never met them. We're going to start with Mr. Holland.
I'm George Holland. I'm a native Hoosier. I live in Rushville, and I'm 83 years old. My beautiful wife of nearly 60 years passed away in September with Alzheimer's. I have 2 sons. I have 6 beautiful grandchildren and 1 beautiful great-grandchild. I'm a graduate of Butler University with BS in Chemistry and Zoology. 1961, I was on the Dean's List. I have been very active in the political arena since I first ran for Congress in 1986. I was the Democratic nominee in 1988 against Mr. Burton, and I was also the Libertarian nominee in 2008 against Mr. Pence. I have quite a varied experience in my life. I'm a working class kid, but 66 years ago today, I was over in Europe on the first year of a 3-year tour of duty as part of NATO. I've had some wonderful experiences as being a member of Veterans for Peace. I was one of the 2 original people who formed Chapter 49, and I have some wonderful experiences, life experiences of listening to survivors of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, I've also listened to Afghanistas who were young Russian combat troops who served in Afghanistan. My website is georgehollandforcongress.com, and I would welcome your inquiries. And thank you.
Thank you. Jeannine?
My name is Jeannine Lee Lake, and I'm running for U.S. Congress, the 6th District. I'm from Muncie, Indiana. I'm 48 years old. I have 4 kids, and I've been a journalist for about 30 years. I've also been a small business owner. I ran an ice cream shop for 11 years. That was fun. And then I also own The Good News, which is the minority newspaper in Muncie, Indiana. I'm running for Congress. I'm actually running for political office for the first time. And I'm running for Congress. People ask me this sometimes, and I have to say that I'm running because I'm really concerned about the direction of our country. I just hear such hateful rhetoric, and I hear unkind words spoken, and I hear attacks on Americans simply because they may not look like or sound like or love like certain other people. And when my daughter came to me and she said, Mom, she said, I feel like some people hate us that are in government. And it's disheartening and it's sad when we're having a generation of children that are growing up thinking that this is normal. I grew up in the days where people like President Ronald Reagan said that we were a city on a hill. I grew up in the days where Jimmy Carter was working on Habitat for Homes to help people that were less fortunate. The days where Tip O'Neill, maybe even Mr. Gingrich would be in Congress and they would talk about the issues and the things that mattered to people without attacking. And I believe there's a spirit of civility that needs to come back to Congress and back to Washington and back to this district. And I would love to represent my community in this state, and citizens that I know are optimistic and hopeful and, like me, just want the best for America. And that's why I'm running. I would love to have your vote. I look forward to tonight. I appreciate Eric and you all for inviting us here today. And I'm excited to be part of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Pruett.
Hi, I'm Jim Pruett. I'm from Greensburg, Indiana. I've been an attorney in Greensburg for little over 31 years. I'm married to my lovely wife, Mimi. I've been married for 40 years. We have 2 children, Jay and Cindy. Cindy is married to Nick, and they have my only grandchild, Lucas. And he's the real reason that I am running for office, because I'm concerned about his future. I'm very concerned about his future. You know, we as Americans, every generation of Americans has left the next generation better off. But when I look at my grandson, I have to be honest, I wonder if that's going to be the case as time goes on. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I'm 60 years old. I was born, believe it or not, on July the 4th. I have never run for office before, but at my last birthday party, my grandson, who is autistic, he's high-functioning autistic, but he climbed up in my lap because he likes to help me blow the candles out. And I just looked down at him and I just wondered what kind of life he was going to live. And it's the entire gamut of economics to healthcare to politics itself, because I've seen over the years that we have lost the real meaning of politics in this country. We've lost the idea of the first 3 words of our Constitution, we the people. Abraham Lincoln once said that we have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And over the course of time, I have seen it become more a government of the donor, by the donor, and for the donor. Or if you want to put in there lobbyists, you can do that. I want to see government return to the people, and that is my goal, is to once again reestablish a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I have a lot of other things to say which will probably come out here tonight. But my time's up, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Joshua Williamson.
Hi, my name is Joshua Williamson. You can find out more about me, joshuawilliamson2018.com. This is my first time running for any political office, and I'm running because this country has lost its can-do attitude. The Founding Fathers loved science, loved the potential of the human mind, and we were founded with practically a worship of both of those things. And our first 175 years, we were always pushing the limit of what we could achieve. And we always seemed to have hope, and we were always the best at everything. And then after World War II, communism was paired so heavily with atheism and science. And we combated communism during the Cold War by pairing capitalism with anti-science and with Christianity and a push for religiosity. And so our motto changed from E pluribus unum, out of many one, to In God We Trust. And we've had a 65-year war on science, and we've coasted up to this point because of the first 175 years of being very anti-military, pro-education, pro-science, and the steam is running out of our tank at this point. So for me, it culminates with 25 years ago, people taking the floor of Congress as we're trying to fund the largest particle accelerator in the world, and they're saying that, you know, America doesn't suffer from a lack of understanding of the origins of the universe. And so a country founded on science and reason has ceded every discovery of the past 20 years to Europe. And it's not just the particle physics, it's stem cell research, it's cloning, it's everything. And we've gone from this dynamic can-do attitude where we love ourselves as human beings to now we're just we're basically hiding and ashamed. We're building up walls. We're hoarding guns. We're throwing insults at the people that we apparently can't compete with on a level playing field. We have to jack up the price of their goods because we can't just do better ourselves and beat them. And that's why I'm running. I just want a conversation to begin that leads us back to our real values before it's too late and we run out of steam completely and lose our place in the world.
Thank you. We'll have a conversation. We'll ask the questions. You can ask the questions. Give us a call, 973-8587. Send your question on Twitter at WCTV Info, or you can also comment on Facebook. We'll start with a couple of things that have been in the news lately, and that if you were elected to Congress, you would have to deal with. The first one is really pretty simple. Tell me what border security looks like for you. And what we'll do is kind of go around, let everybody answer. Then if you feel like you need to jump back in, let me know. And we get to start with you, Jeannine.
I am in support of border security. You know, we have laws for this country, but we also are a country that used to welcome everyone to this country. The Statue of Liberty, I believe, has a plaque that says just that. I do understand the concerns that we have in terms of, you know, taking care of America first. I'm very patriotic. I believe in that. But I also, again, I believe that there's a pathway for the dreamers to be here. I don't think that we should shut our doors to everyone. I don't think that we should kick everyone out that is here, that is law-abiding and has proven themselves to be Americans. These kids have been birthed here. They have families here. They go to school here. You know, they are, for all intents and purposes, Americans. I do encourage, of course, the pathway to citizenship. That is the law. That is legal. I'm not of the Trump mind that we should keep everyone out. I'm more of the idea that, you know, this country flourishes with diversity. We have welcomed people through our country that has made our country better in many ways. When you look at education, healthcare, sciences, culture itself. So I think that's a slippery slope to go down in terms of just saying build the wall. It's divisive in many ways. It's meant to be divisive in many ways, and it's meant to draw contrast to those who care, I believe, and those who maybe have some other ulterior motives. And so I do believe that I think there's more to be talked about and discussed about that. But I also think that we shy away from the discussion because we just believe it's black and white, and that's it. And I don't believe it's black and white. There's a lot of gray area there, and I think that instead of taking these polarized positions and just saying, no, that's it, or yes, just welcome everybody, I think we find ourselves at an impasse, and that never does us any good. I'd like to be able to incorporate more Americans into the conversation. I don't want a talking head from Congress that's a millionaire talking for me. I'm in Muncie. I don't make $1 million. We have 4 children that are in college, and we live from, we might not live from paycheck to paycheck, but we certainly don't have the savings that we used to. So I don't, I'm an average American, and I would like to hear from more people in Muncie, in the 6th District, people that are, concerned about these issues, rather than hearing, just from someone in the Oval Office that may have their own prejudices.
Jim, what does border security look like to you?
Well, let me start off by saying, as you get older, sometimes you forget things. My website is Pruett4, it's Pruett, the number 4, Indiana.com. I urge you to go there. Border security. Basically, I think we need to, first of all, enforce the laws that we have. Then we need to increase the presence on the border. Now, I am not in favor of building a wall. And the reason for that is because it's a titanic waste of money. You can go under a wall, you can go over a wall, you can even go through a wall. The Chinese built a wall, and it didn't stop Genghis Khan from coming through. The wall itself is just nothing more than a symbol. We need to repair. I did see something on the news where, we have a certain section of the wall and it just stops, and the Rio Grande is dry right at this moment due to drought, and so people can just walk across. We do need to enforce our border, and we also need to man the border. Now, I don't believe in putting our Army on the border, because you're asking the Army to do something that it's not equipped to do. But we need more border agents. And it's very easy to set up stations along that border. And even if you build a wall, you're still going to have to do that, because you can't just build a wall and expect that wall to stop people from coming across. Now, like Jeannine said, I am in favor of limiting immigration to those people who go through the proper channels to immigrate here. But when it comes to the immigrants that are already here, we need to act with some compassion. Just tearing people away from families and things of that nature does not look good for America. Each and every single one of us is an immigrant. And I include Native Americans in that, because so far as we know scientifically, but through archaeologists, every single person that is in this country today, including Native Americans, immigrated into this country. And so we are a nation of immigrants. And my feeling is that we need to begin to look toward a process that is a bipartisan process between both the Democrats and the Republicans, and work this situation out. Now, if you put the Army on the border with Mexico, what does that look like to the Mexicans? that's not a good look for the United States to be putting troops on borders. So, in my mind, the first thing to do is enforce those laws that we have compassionately, repair the fencing that needs to be repaired, but also act with some form of compassion toward those people who have come here and who have been good and good citizens, or not good citizens, but good workers and good people. I've represented these people in court before. Most of them are very hard workers. We also have an issue with agriculture because we have to be able to have immigrants that come in to do the agricultural work in this country. And the reason that I say that is because if you talk to the farmers that hire these people to do the work, they can't find any other persons to do the work. So we have to consider that as well. And I'm rambling on here, and I don't mean to do that. So let's look at it this way: enforce the laws, secure the border, but act with compassion, especially toward those DACA persons, because they are here and they are, by all intents and purposes, American citizens, and we need to carve out a system whereby they can actually become citizens because they really already are. Thank you.
Joshua.
Yeah. So the wall for me is like going back to the Stone Age. So we already have so much surveillance on every single one of our citizens because of the Patriot Act, and I don't agree with that, but the system is in place. So we could have everyone, because people aren't just flooding across the border, walking. People are flying here, and then they're overstaying their visas and stuff. So if everyone that entered this country just had to have their cell phone number recorded and tracked, we already have the system in place. It's not costing us any more money. We don't have to do anything special to track them. And then on the actual border itself, instead of a wall, which is silly, we have satellite surveillance systems. We could make, like Amazon had this delivery system. I think it was Amazon. But it's basically like telephone poles, but they're like drone hubs. So the drones dock with them. They could be solar powered. And then they just fly in their little range and patrol their area. And then they could alert the border security, which we would need much less of if we were able to actually look at the border properly. It's insane to me to see such technological advancement, and people, it's like they're incapable of seeing how to implement it and spend massive amounts of money on rocks to build a wall. So that, that's all I'll say about the wall.
Okay. George, what does border security look like to you?
Well, let me say this, that first thing is you have to define, why are these people coming into the country? What are they fleeing from? I've been to Central America twice. I've been to Honduras, which is one of the poorest of the Central American countries. And one of the things you find in these countries is a disparity of wealth, the ultra-rich versus the ultra-poor. And anybody who speaks of any reform, whether schooling, health care, social welfare type programs, they aren't around too long. And people are fleeing terror, they're fleeing poverty, they're fleeing hunger, and there's not going to be any easy solution to this. Putting up a wall is not going to stop the problem of why these people are coming north. Now, the trade-off is what are the costs of these? We're running closer to $22 trillion in national debt right now, and it's increasing more and more. And what do we have? We have tax cuts, which are unbelievable, but they're cutting programs, social welfare programs, in order to pay for those. Now, for instance, Medicaid is being cut, I think, well over $1 trillion. Medicare, which I'm concerned about, is being cut $558 billion. And Social Security, another thing I'm concerned about, is being cut $10 billion. Now, I'm against that. So where are our priorities? I think this is going to have to be the type of thing where you have to, it's very emotional on this dreamer issue, but poverty is increasing in America. It's actually increasing in the elderly, it's increasing in children, at all levels of our lives, and the income is not there anymore. Since the year 2000, the median income per family has risen about $300, while the cost of a new home has gone like from $160,000 or something in 2000 to over $320,000 today. So the thing is, you have to have your priorities. You can talk about what we can do for these people, but there's a limit to what can be done other than just talking about it. And I think one of the things is we have to stop supplying these militaries of these countries down there with these sophisticated weapons of oppressing people. We've got to let people have their freedoms south of the border, and I think when we do that and talk about that and holding these countries accountable to how they treat their own citizens, then you're going to see some difference in the influx of this slowing down somewhat, because that's what it is.
Okay. You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I know Sayward wants to get a first question in. We've got a couple on Twitter, but we'll let you get your first one in and we'll go. And Jim, we're going to start with you on this first answer.
The economy is doing very well, according to a March 30th article from NPR. Yet many people seem to be focused on a need to create jobs, when in reality there are many jobs that are not filled due to a lack of skilled labor. What plans do you have to increase skilled workers to fill these positions?
Okay. The economy's doing well. We have a lot of people employed, but wages are not keeping pace with that. Most working and middle-class Americans' wages have not kept pace. And even though they have increased a little bit here lately, it's not nearly enough. My understanding is that the productivity wage should be somewhere in the $18+ an hour range. We still have a minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. And you know what, people say, oh, well, nobody makes that amount anymore. Well, maybe they don't make quite that low, but let me tell you, in my line of work, I've run into people that do, and I run into people that make $8 an hour and $8.75 an hour, and let me tell you, you can't live on that. As far as creating better jobs, we're going to have to start putting money into our education system instead of taking money out of our education system, because first and foremost, we need to relieve the debt that's on our college students. You know, we could start very, very quickly by taking the interest rates down and making the interest rates actually I'd like to go to zero on the interest rates and let people actually pay back the loan without having to pay interest on it. But if we're going to have interest, it should be no more than banks pay to the Federal Reserve when they borrow money from the Federal Reserve. Next, we need to also start taking a look at vocational programs, technical programs. We need to get our trade unions involved in apprenticeship programs. And the reason for this is that we are right now in the greatest technological explosion in the history of mankind. Now, we've gone through an industrial revolution before, but that was different than what we have today, because in those days, people had to build the machines, they had to operate the machines, they had to supply the machines, maintain the machines, and so on and so forth, and we actually created jobs. This new technology is taking jobs away because the machines do it all themselves. And they are continuing to grow smarter and smarter. And they're going to be able to fix themselves. They're going to be able to operate themselves. My wife had talked to an engineer from Cummins. And that engineer had toured a plant in Japan in which there were no workers on the floor. They kept track of the machines through virtual I can't think of the word, but the goggles that you wear and that's how they kept track of what was going on. We're entering that age. In 20 to 25 years, factory jobs are gone. They're not going to be around. And we have to start right now addressing our educational system. Not everybody needs to go to college. Some of us need to do vocational, some of us need technical, so on and so forth. But we've got to prepare for this now, and we've got to prepare our children for this now, because if we don't, it will be too late. Other countries around the world are already seeing this, and they're already starting to address these problems. But we have to start now.
This up a little bit.
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
try
this
to
is right in your wheelhouse.
Try to go a little faster. So, yeah, like he was saying, the technological explosion that's happening, and so if you just do some Google searching, just look at the research reports that have come out, because every country commissions these reports, and businesses commission these reports, because they're trying to see what they need to do over the next couple of years to roll with the punches and stay in the game. And all of the reports are saying that, like, I think it was a Forrester research report that came out at the end of last year, so that we were going to lose 9% of all of our jobs by the end of this year, and then automation was going to bring onto the table 2%. So eliminate 9%, take 2% on, so a net 7% loss to automation this year. And we can stimulate and add jobs in other areas, and we might not see a direct 7% loss, but this is going to be one of the most mild years, because it just keeps scaling up how quickly these things are developing. And all of the reports are saying that we need to start thinking of the job market in terms of timelines for automation, and not full jobs, but skill sets. So, like, some jobs the whole job is encompassed in these skill sets that are being replaced by automation, and it's not just automation like physical robots, because we have battery limitations and just the ability to connect well enough to Wi-Fi services. So, but it's programs. It's replacing the basic, like, secretary work, the billers and coders, the day-to-day tasks that have always been kind of our middle class job market. That's what's getting replaced. And even CEOs now are starting to be automated. I forget the name of it. It's on my website. But anyways, so all of the reports are saying we need to concentrate on training in key skills. Like, think of the job market as you might be in a field for 5 years and then have to shift. And so extending unemployment and making it mandatory that you retrain in other skills, even if you think that you're going to have a job in your same field. Like, prioritize lists of how quickly they're going to be automated, the exact timelines, how many people are necessary in each area, and start funneling people out of jobs that are going away into jobs that are still going to last a little longer, and keep rolling with that. That's, yeah.
Okay. George, do you need her to repeat
Well,
the question?
I was going to say, since the year 2000, and this is interesting when you look at the median wage and what's happened to it in the past 18 years since year 2000. Now, I, being an anti-war veteran, am opposed to our expenditures in these wars of where there were no weapons of mass destruction. They were based on lies, deceit, and greed. The trade-off is we have lost 4.7 million manufacturing jobs. And when you lose manufacturing jobs, you lose good paying jobs, factory wage paying jobs, and that's why the median wage has gone nowhere in 18 years. So there has to be, again, what are our priorities? You know, I'm a people person. I'm a working class kid, although I'm degreed. This is why I'm involved in, and my concern are social issues. Look at Medicare, Social Security, and I could talk hours on that, but actually finding ways of putting people back into productivity. We have people who are not being productive, and that's the sad thing. You can educate people, you can give them skills, but you have to have some kind of job for them to use those skills. And when we lose 4.7 million manufacturing jobs since year 2000, you can see that this is going to be a hard trend to reverse. And my point would be is what, again, listing the priorities, because politicians can make a lot of promises, and yet when it comes down to, getting things done, they aren't done, because this country now is in very bad shape, and we have an aging population which is going to need more and more medical care. Alzheimer's is going to be a real problem in the years to come. It's a problem now. I lost my beautiful wife to that. So I can know firsthand and share that information that as these things progress and become more and more of a medical problem, they're going to become more of a social welfare problem too. And we are going to have to address these neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things like that. There might be a tremendous amount of employment here for skilled people in the nursing care field. There could be. Physiotherapy, I mean, there's a lot of potential here if you're talking about jobs and taking care of sick people. And that's what we're going to have to be addressing.
Yes. I was talking to the mayor of Muncie recently, and he was saying that there are so many calls that come into his office saying that, these jobs that are about $30,000 a year aren't being filled. And why aren't they being filled? He wants to know. He was asking a group of us. And I think the consensus was that they don't have the skills. They don't have the vocational skills. They don't have the technical skills. Those that don't go to college are lingering out there, but they need to be able to go to a vocational college. They need to be able to, learn the things that they need to do for these manufacturing jobs that aren't, they might not be $60,000, but they are $30,000. And if you're a single person, at least that is a foot in the door. But we also think that part of the problem is that they don't have the money to go. And so one of the things that my campaign is an advocate of is college for the first 2 years for free. Community college, you get tuition. We can pay for it with lottery monies. We can find some other monies. We find monies for everything else. We need to be able to start taking care of our students that come out of high school. They've got a GPA maybe of 2.5, 3.0, somewhere in between there. They've done well at high school. Why not give them an opportunity to go to one of these technical schools, ITT, something like that. I'm not sure if that's around anymore, but that wasn't my day. But something like that, where they can learn how to weld, where they can learn, these different skills that they need for these jobs. Because right now, these jobs are languishing and they don't have, people to fill them. I'm very concerned about the future of these young people that don't really kind of know where they want to fit in. But I think as Americans, we need to forge the path for them, to make the jobs, to bring back the jobs that are elsewhere and going overseas. And if elected to Congress, that's certainly what I'm going to try to get done.
I wish we could have more of a conversation, like a flow going on in this, instead of just each person rambling for a while, because there's so many points that it would be nice if we could participate in.
And you can. I want to give everybody a chance. But if everybody will shorten their answers just a little bit on the front side, you can go with the flow. Did you have a follow-up or something that you wanted to?
Yeah, there were a couple things. Like I'm really sorry for your loss with your wife, but I don't think that we're going to become a gigantic hospice and that's the future we're relegated to. Like, stem cell research is one of the many ways that are coming online that if we hadn't have fought so hard against it in this country for religious reasons, that might not have happened, and it doesn't need to continue happening. So just technology pushing science.
I can only share with you what I read.
Yeah.
And these neurodegenerative diseases are going to become worse and worse.
They
I can't give
will
you an
if we
explanation
don't
for it.
invest
Now, as far as treating them, there is no
in
cure for
treatments.
Alzheimer's yet today.
Right.
And
but we're
let's
close.
not kid ourselves. This has got to be a priority. And that's what I'm thinking in terms of these military expenditures. I'm for cutting the
Yeah.
military spending, quite honestly,
Yeah.
like $300 billion.
Well, it just needs to
And putting that into a system of regional health centers devoted to the treatment, the care of these neurodegenerative diseases. Also, Parkinson's, muscular dystrophy. I mean, there's so many
There's
of
a
these
lot of
things out there.
And I agree with the military spending. That's Democrats talk a lot about we need to invest in this and we need to make these programs and stuff, and we're never talking about how to streamline existing programs and save money to where we can. And the military is one thing. Like if we peg it to a percentage of our GDP, and just have it, the global average is 2.2% of a country's GDP. We spend 3.3 to 4.4% with this new spending bill. It's even higher now. If we were just spending 2.2% of our GDP, the global average, it encourages us to invest the money. We're still spending twice as much as any other country on earth at that point, so it wouldn't hurt us in any way. And we could invest in our economy and our infrastructure and training and education. We spend 1% of our GDP on education. 2% would basically give us free education. And we can save 2% by just rolling back to the average for global GDP. So
Let me put it in another way, okay?
Yeah.
I went back to Europe as a tourist
Yeah.
when I was out of college, had some money in 1985. I saw the wealth and prosperity, and I thought, there's no way that we need to be spending our tax dollars. I think we spend about, fund about 24% of NATO.
yeah.
Now,
And we
again,
we
I was
pay
over there
average taxes. We
66
should
years
have
ago.
average goods
I
and
was not
services
the only kid over
for
there,
our citizens.
and we're still over there. And look at
Yeah.
what's happening to our infrastructure, to health, to all these social welfare issues here at home.
Well, and that's
We're worrying
why.
about a border wall.
That's what I'm saying.
Where we've got troops, in 130
And
countries
that's
around the world.
why we've seen this 65-year decline now since the end of World War II. We stopped being a country that cared about ourselves and pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and capabilities, and instead we just became a military state. It started policing the world, the things that our founding fathers were completely against, a standing army. The things that they quoted being against the most was a standing army and the church. And that's the only thing you can be patriotic and say you're for these days. It's ridiculous.
I think there's not a lot that I agree with the current administration on, but I do believe that America, we need to look within our own borders and start really tackling these domestic issues more so than anything. I read somewhere the other day that we're going to borrow $1.3 trillion from China this
Yeah,
next
we
year.
just spent 1.3
That's
basically on the
insane.
military.
Why do we continue to do this year after year after year? And why do we keep electing people to Congress if they're going to just keep on borrowing money? And I hate to say it, as much as I'm
Well, and how can they be conservative on everything except military spending and just keep that? There's no limit on military spending. Are we going to spend our whole GDP on military spending?
Recently
Just
with the tax
protect our guns. That's the only thing we have left.
bill for
My
military.
issue with military spending is I want to know where it's going.
Right.
Right.
We're spending $700 billion on military spending. All we hear is how military spending needs to be increased, and our military's in terrible shape, and so on and so forth. And we need to spend more money on it. So we go from $600 billion to $700 billion. And the question I have is why? Where's it going? And what? And pardon my pun here, but what kind of bang are we getting for the buck?
Especially when a
Because,
drone costs a tenth of a fighter jet.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm getting at is that you know, if this money is going to the troops and helping the troops improve and making sure that our troops are well taken care of, perhaps there's an argument for that. But I don't see that. We have become buried in the military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower warned us about, and we need to put a stop to it.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WCTV Channel 11. We have some people who have sent in questions for you all. We want to get to those. Joshua, you'll be able to answer this first one. These have come off of Twitter. The first question is, what are your thoughts on a woman's choice? What are your thoughts on a woman's choice? And you get to start.
The only reason this is an issue is because we haven't had a proper separation of church and state. This is essentially a non-issue. There's enough data showing that since abortion was legalized across America, we this sounds horrible, but Freakonomics was a book that we had to read as mandatory reading at university, and in it, it cited a study. You can read this study. Just Google crime rates with abortion or something like that, and you'll find it. But basically, the states that legalized abortion, you see 16, 17 years later, a drastic reduction in crime, because the people in low income, in families that said, we don't want these children, we can't afford these children, they turned to crime a lot. Like they're not bad people, but the position they're in encourages people to turn to crime. And so all the states that legalized abortion, as soon as the prime age for starting to commit crime came up, the people weren't born to do it. So the crime rates dropped off. And you can see it in each state that legalized it, and then across the nation, our reduction in crime. The same with the poverty levels, because now the parents, they can both earn a good income, go to school, prioritize things in their life, and get into a better position to actually take care of kids later on. Like, I don't know how anyone could condemn a person to be born into a situation where they are completely and utterly unwanted for anything other than religion. It makes no sense. And so that's how I feel about women's choice. I'm all for it. I don't understand why it's an issue.
May I address something here? There was a woman's choice, and that's exactly what it is. It's the woman's choice. The reason we have what we have as far as a woman legalizing abortion is because of the horrors of the back alley butcher shops. I'm convinced from talking with a nurse who worked as an emergency room at a large Indianapolis hospital, who handled patients who either had been into a self-induced abortion and was suffering, or was suffering from the after effects of the back alley butcher shop type abortion. And we can't go back to that. That's why, I don't know anyone who really likes abortions or approves of them. But the point is, that is the individual woman's choice. It's her choice to make. And it has to be, if she chooses to have an abortion, it has to be clean and safe and sterile, so that there aren't these deaths. Before we had legalized abortion, I know for a fact, many, and I'll use the word religious-oriented women committed suicide when they became pregnant and they had no other outlet. And we can't have that. So it's a choice that has to be, I hear politicians say they're pro-life. I don't hear them say they're anti-choice. And what I do hear them say, well, if they're pro-life, why aren't you anti-war? You see, that's my thought. Because there you are getting into a situation of people don't have a choice when you go to war. You can become a victim, or you can become, a killer, or whatever it is that leads, you into that situation. But that's the point. It's, this is a woman's choice. That has to be respected.
force people to be born into poverty and then cut every single program that could help them out of it too. Like, it's a double.
Okay.
Well, that's
Jeannine?
one of the things that I always say, and I agree with you, George, Mr. Holland. No one.
Okay, you make the
Okay. No one is pro-abortion. I don't think there's anyone that thinks that's a wonderful thing to do. Certainly not myself. And as a person that respects the sanctity of life, I would think that I would tell people, if that's a choice for you, then that is a choice for you. But other people may not have those same religious views that I have. And I don't think that we should be putting our religious views on everyone out there in society. That these are voters. They should be able to decide what goes on within their own families. Personally, as a person that's of faith, and I've been in the ministry and I've helped counsel different people in different situations, I do think it's not only a woman's choice, but again, sometimes it's a parent's choice. We counseled a young girl who was, she wasn't even a teenager, and she had been raped by her uncle. And in that situation, her family did not want her to be tied to that person for the rest of her life, and they didn't. She was already going through some issues. That actually did not end in abortion because she ended up having a miscarriage. She was a young girl. But that is not my responsibility to make. I believe that is that family's responsibility is to make. If a person's older, they're a young woman that decides to do that, I'm sorry, that's her body, that's her choice. She would be the person to have to either raise that child, or she would have to give the child away, or make other provisions for the child. That is not my responsibility. I'm really upset at those who use religion to legislate morality. That's not their responsibility. To me, I think we should be sticking to the things that have a little bit more to do with being pro-life outside of life. It's amazing. I always say this, and maybe it's not politically correct to say it, but it's amazing how they're pro-life until the child gets out of the womb, and then they call you a welfare queen. And I just got to say it because exactly what they say. The minute they don't want to provide health care, they don't want to provide any kind of post-birth opportunities for a better life for that child. So all I would say to those people that want to make those decisions that affect women who sometimes often are poor, these women that are having these abortions, we got to be honest, truth be told, most of them are African Americans, they're young, and they're poor. And let's see about something else. What about getting them before they get pregnant? What about giving them equal access to reproductive birth control, things like that?
Give it out.
Yes. Well, we might not be able to give it out, but we can make it more accessible than what it is now, and make it more affordable. So
We're going to let Jim jump in.
I don't want the government to dictate the treatment between myself and my doctor. And I certainly don't believe that the government should dictate the treatment between a woman and her doctor. What we're really talking about when we talk about abortion are abortions that are done for convenience sake. The issue as I see this is once you start to implement these anti-abortion laws, you're going to wind up with the greatest litigation problem in the history of this country. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for 31 years. I know what I'm talking about with this, because doctors will refuse to perform certain procedures on women for fear that if the woman is pregnant, for the fear that what they do may trigger an abortion. And then they're going to be in trouble for having induced an abortion. And what kind of abortions are we talking about? It's easy to say, well, if the life of the mother is in danger, then who's going to make that decision? I'll tell you who's going to make that decision. Your local judge will make that decision. And you're going to have situations in which women who are in critical care, doctors are going to be forced either to make a horrific decision on their own, and take the risk that they're going to go to jail for it, or they will simply refuse to perform, and the woman will pass away because of that. And there are all kinds of problems that are associated with just saying, oh, we're outlawing abortion. But it's my belief that a woman has a choice. Now, Roe v. Wade was a very well-written decision. Roe v. Wade says that until the child reaches viability, then the choice of what the mother does with her body is her decision. Once a child reaches viability, then the government may regulate.
Exactly.
And the issue that creates is what is viability? Now, as time goes on, viability gets shorter and shorter, but it has to be a clear-cut viability. I think that Roe v. Wade should stand. I think we should adhere to it. And if in the future things change, then we may need to rethink that position. But for right now, that's what we have, and that's what we need to maintain. And I agree with Jeannine. If you're going to say that a woman can't have an abortion, then you should be prepared to support that child once that child is born. And stop and think about that for a minute when we have, as George said, people wanting to cut Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, so on and so forth. So yes, I am in favor of a woman's choice.
So this is an interesting issue that's going to come up extremely soon, and probably might be coming up around now in other countries. Google, I think it was a goat, but an artificial womb. And the viability thing is getting pushed way back. Like, I think it's like just a couple weeks now they could remove it and put it in an artificial womb, and you watch the whole, I'm pretty sure it was a goat, either goat or a sheep, but grow up inside the bag and then walking around afterwards. So we're going to have to rethink these things and take it away from just what is able to survive or whatever, because the line is going to be pushed further and further until you have like pluripotent stem cells. Just scratch your nose, make a baby.
I've seen that same thing, and perhaps if we get to that point, then we will have to address that.
We're basically there.
Well,
it's
not
just
completely,
not trials yet.
There is a difference between an animal and a human, and that's where we're going to need to address that issue. But again, you go back to the point of, if you bring a child into the world, someone has to be responsible for that child. And we need to have better birth control, better access to birth control, as Jeannine said. But until we reach these points, these are things that, yes, we are going to have to address in the future. And it's going to be a very difficult thing to address. But for right now, what I'm saying is, yes, I am still pro-choice in accordance with Roe v. Wade.
And also to stop trying to defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood provides many low-cost opportunities for birth control. And it also, one of the 19, I looked up the other day on the website, one of the 19 opportunities for birth control also includes classes on abstinence. So those that are religious and have some spiritual issues with Planned Parenthood, did you know that they're also teaching classes on abstinence and morality?
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with candidates running for the 6th Congressional District. From the Democrat side, George Holland, Jeannine Lake, Jim Pruett, Joshua Williamson. Thank you all very much for being here, for putting your name on the ballot. If you have a question, we're still taking your questions. Tweet at WCTV Info. Call us 973-8587. Comment on Facebook Live. Sayward Salazar is here. She's been very quiet for a while. She's representing our partners with the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. We'll let her go with the next question.
Oh, I get to go with the next question. Okay, since we're talking about health care, the Attorney General, Jerome Adams, released a statement urging an increase in the use of naloxone or Narcan for those experiencing an overdose of opiates. He has proposed using block grants and other federal funding to support this. Do you support this, and how do you see this helping the state of Indiana?
And George, you start on this one.
Well, I'm having difficulty hearing what she was actually, what the question was.
The question is, do you support using block grants and federal funding to increase the use of Narcan?
Well, there you're trading one addiction for another if you use a substitute narcotic.
Well, Narcan is
No,
what's
Narcan.
used
Oh,
to,
no,
yeah.
Narcan now. I'm all in
Yeah.
favor of that. In fact, I often wonder why they didn't use it years ago, because it's been a tremendous lifesaver. No, anything that you can do to help people, and here again, this is getting back to a people issue, and that's what I'm for. Anything you can do to help people, yes, I would support that. Again, how are you going to fund it? And this is where, you know, where you have to be really adamant in your beliefs and weigh what happens here if you don't, and what happens here if you do. And again, the positives outweigh the negatives, but you have to decide then, what are you going to give up? Because with the tremendous debt, the states are to the point anymore, it's my understanding, that they can't fund any more programs because of taxes, and they want to pass things on to the federal level. Well, the federal level now is to the point where it's saturated. So, you see, this is why when you I'm opposed to the tax cuts, because some of those were so ridiculous, okay? But here again, the trade-off is then you're going to have to cut programs and social welfare programs. And we have an aging population, folks. And that is a reality. And that's why I'm running for Congress.
We're going to have to find something. I understand what you're saying. But President Trump has talked about federal dollars coming down to the states to be able to deal with the opioid crisis. It is already, they say it's a crisis, but I'm not sure what the next step it would be toward an epidemic. But in Muncie, I think we're at the top of the list, unfortunately, with regard to this substance abuse issue, meth, heroin, that kind of thing. Right down across from our church, we've actually been broken into several times because of this. It's ravaging families. It's ravaging neighborhoods. I believe CASA has 400 children that are in need of services because their parents are unable to take care of them. The foster care system is astronomically pushed to the limits. Our police officers, our law enforcement, our public safety officers in Muncie, I think we went maybe $70,000 in overtime last year because this has been such an issue that's been so pervasive, and it cuts across demographics, it cuts across race, age, everything. Men and women, it's taking our families away. And I hope that we're able to look at some other options from rehab centers instead of putting them in jail, especially the first and second, maybe even the third time. These people are sick. They don't deserve prison. They shouldn't deserve prison. I'm from the generation, even though I'm about 48 years old, I do remember in the 80s and the 90s, the same thing happened with the crack cocaine addiction in the African American neighborhoods. And instead of giving them an opportunity to get help and to get clean, we just threw them in jail. That meant that those fathers went to prison. They busted up the families. The mothers didn't have, they were trying to raise their kids too. It just is devastating. And I think we should learn from the past to be able to help the future. And if that's one thing that I think that I would say, let's give these families a fighting chance, because if we don't put the money in, you talk about some more problems down the road. We're going to see just these families obliterated because they're already being they're being destroyed. We have got to get in touch with the opioid crisis ASAP.
Okay. Jim.
The addiction crisis is not a criminal crisis. It's a healthcare crisis. And I think I'm not going to say a simple solution, but I'm in favor of universal health insurance. Every single American should be covered by health insurance the same as every other American. And if we do this, we can lower the cost of health care because hospitals will no longer have to worry about how they get paid when someone doesn't have insurance. Everyone will be insured. But more importantly to the addiction crisis is that it will enable people to seek out the treatment that they need in the mental health, in the mental health care and treatment centers, rather than, continue down the path. Now, I do understand that a person has to want to not be addicted to substances, and that's an issue. But if you put them in jail, all you're doing is, okay, you treat them, they dry out while they're in jail. As soon as they come out of jail, they have the same problems. So in some respects, it's also an economic problem. We need to be able to help these people have a better life, period. Now, the issue and the real problem is, what do you do with people who just don't want to be cured, so to speak? Cured is not the correct word. That is probably going to require that we put into our criminal justice system treatment as opposed to just simply locking them up. Now, again, they have to want to get better, but if they go to treatment enough, then perhaps they'll see the light. I don't know. But in direct answer to your question, yes, I'm in favor of providing the funding for Narcan and so on and so forth, because the one thing we have to understand is these people are human beings. Every single one of us is a human being. And if we don't have compassion for each other, then we have no compassion for anything. And I've heard this, well, 3 strikes and you're out. We won't give it to you if you've had it 3. What? You're going to just let someone lay there and die? I don't think the police officers and the paramedics and the fire department persons that I know would never let a person just lay there and die. So, yes, I'm in favor of that.
May I say something here?
Hold on. Before you jump in, we're going to let Joshua has not had a chance to speak. We'll let him speak, and then we'll come back in. And we're under probably about 20 minutes left to go, just so you know.
So when things have gotten this bad, there's so many issues that have led us to this point, to where we basically have nationwide depression, and that's what this real crisis is all about. And when things have gotten this bad, all you can do is like Band-Aid solutions at first. You need that, and that's what this is. And yes, so fund that. But then the bigger issue is all of the stuff that got us here. So the cost of education, the minimum wage, the cost of medical, and all of these things. Almost every single issue that we have, it's not that we're not spending enough money. Like we're spending a ton of money on our healthcare system. We're like 3rd or 4th, I think, in the world for how much we're spending on it, and then we're 1st if you include public and private funds. It's a structure issue. Like we're nothing is integrated, nothing is linked. Every government office, they can't communicate between offices. We have blockchain tech. Like, start using these things, connect everything, streamline, automate, get the cost of everything down and get the gears turning again. With medical, we have a parasitic insurance industry that's only being propped up by government regulation right now. So like, if every time that I'm paying my monthly insurance bills and everything compared to how much I go to, 60% of all the money is being eaten up by the insurance companies themselves. All of the billers and coders need to communicate with them, and then the doctors getting the rest. And if we could just pay our doctors directly, back in like the 20s, we had what's called prepaid physicians groups. You had doctors that were basically the insurance companies. They grouped up. They had an incentive at that point not to overprescribe because they're getting the same amount every month no matter what. They had an incentive to keep their patients healthy because they're getting the same amount no matter what. And so they don't want to pay for these big surgeries and everything, so regular visits. Like, they're streamlining the system, taking away parasites in the system that that are only, could not be there in a free market. They're only there because of the government regulation not allowing us to pay our doctors directly. So yeah, I'm for spending money on Band-Aid solutions when things have gotten this bad, but things should never have gotten this bad in the first place.
Well, Jim, I wanted to compliment him for bringing that up. National health care, yes. Universal health care, single payer, I don't care how you express it. I'm glad you did that.
But then where's the competition between doctors? If you
The point is, I got a little blurb the other day from, I forget who, about 30,000 people a year, Americans. Now we're all talking about other people, die each year in this country because somehow they cannot fit into that insurance system and they either fall through the cracks or whatever. But 30,000 people a year. Now that's a lot of loss of life.
Unnecessary loss.
Unnecessary, again, yes. And if we're talking about pro-life, then let's support universal health care. We look to Canada. There's a good example, our neighbor to the north. We are the only industrialized nation in the world, folks, that does not have universal health care for its citizens.
But it has to be set up properly. If we just basically pay for the system all ourselves, like on government spending, and nothing changes about the basic setup, and there's no competition between doctors' groups. Like if we just leveled the regulatory playing field and let doctors form prepaid physicians groups again, it would be half the cost. The doctors that try to do this and end up getting sued and everything and having to stop, they're all reporting at least 10% extra earnings per year because the whole massive parasite is gone, and they can
Joshua, let me say something here, and I do agree with you that maybe what you're saying is not necessarily a bad idea, but you're just describing one small section of the medical system. I mean, you're talking hospitals, clinics. These are massive businesses. Now, just walk into any hospital and look around. Just walk into the lobby and look around.
Tell every hospital, though, that they can charge whatever they want. There's no competition between them. There's no play in the game.
But that's the point. If you have universal health insurance, everyone's insured. They can go to any hospital they want to. These hospitals will be in competition with each other because they will be competing for the same people. But this time they know they will because
advertising. That's all they'll be competing with is who can shove themselves into people's faces better, because the people don't have any incentive because they're not paying out of their own pocket. The government foots the bill the entire way.
No, they will be paying out of their own pocket because they're going to be paying into the national health care system.
You don't notice it directly, just like if everyone realized how much we were actually spending on military, and if they were able to put in their paycheck, yes, I'll spend this much on military.
Well,
you don't notice it when you're...
That's not really true either, but, I'm saying that there will be competition because people will be insured. They will be paying for their insurance. And I know we're getting over, so I'm just going to shut up here and let
the money that we're spending already, if we leveled the regulatory playing field, would be enough just because it's half the medical fees, and we are spending half the medical fees right now in public spending. So the setup has to be done right, and then the money is already there. And we could have.
You've been quiet. Anything you want to say in this before we move on?
The only thing I would like to add, and this is something since I am in the ministry, I would like to see if there's a way where churches and religious organizations, and also maybe other organizations, goodwill type of organizations, would be a part of the opioid crisis resolutions and problems. I think that we have to start giving some of these groups opportunities to help and maybe embolden them a little bit more, because there's churches in every community that we have. I think Muncie has 360 churches.
But you're not talking about government funding
well,
for churches, are you?
Let me just say this. I think we can work together. I know there's a separation of churches and state, but we've been recently, a group of us pastors have been talking with the mayor about how we can help. Even within our own congregations. And I think they said maybe 78% of people consider themselves a person of faith of some regard. I don't care, whatever it is, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're Jewish, whatever it is, whatever your place of faith is, I think that we can kind of take a little bit of ownership in these situations. And I would personally like to see what can we add to the issue and the problem. Maybe we can adopt, kind of quote unquote, adopt a family that's dealing with those things within our community. I think we got to take it down to the grassroots issue sometimes, instead of just always waiting on government to save us, because in this situation, doing nothing is not the problem. I think we need to have all hands on deck, and I would like to be a part of that. And I think that there are a lot of faith-based organizations that would help in some ways with this problem. And I honestly think that would be a huge asset to every community if they could look at those situations.
I think everyone would love to see faith-based organizations take part in this and
without
help.
proselytizing them.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that.
I don't even care about that.
You're not trying to get people to get saved,
they
but just help
already
them.
collect a tax in tithes. So all for anyone helping, but they are already collecting their own tax from their congregations in tithes. I'm just trying to point out we should never be using tax money to fund religious organizations. Like if they're wanted enough,
well, churches don't accept taxes.
I know. That's what I thought you were leaning towards
right
now.
I'm
is
sorry.
How can
and tithes,
we're talking about we're running for government.
Tithes are
Sure.
at the discretion of every member and every parishioner. That's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I think we can engage these faith-based organizations in a way that we haven't. And truth be told, residents and citizens of America, we need to start taking our own neighborhoods back in whatever way that we can. And we don't need to always rely on the government and people in Congress to help our people, because there are fathers, there are mothers, there are sisters and our brothers, and these are people that we can help. So I certainly think that is something that we can do.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We are down to probably about our last 12 minutes or so. Okay, I just got told in my ear 11 minutes, but I was close. So we've got one more question from Twitter that we need to get to. Jeannine, I believe you will start the answering on this particular question, and we're going to have to keep this obviously relatively quick here. Okay. We've got a little bit of time, but let's not go off. What are your thoughts on the president's proposed transgender ban for the military?
I will answer this. First of all, I'm extremely offended that in 2018 that we're actually having this discussion. It seems to me that anyone that wants to risk their life, give their life, dedicate themselves to becoming a member of the military, all the things that encompass that, they're willing to do that, but yet we're trying to tell them that just because they are transgender, that they can't be a part of American military. I think it's discriminatory. I'm not for it. I think it's hate-filled, and it actually disgusts me that we're having this conversation in 2018. It's shameful. I believe the numbers aren't even really that high. So if it's about 200 people that we're concerned about in terms of some of the, I think it was the medical issues, really what it comes down to, some discussion about 200 people that are transgender that are having some medical issues and costs and things like that. I think that was maybe one of the concerns, is what I read. That's not what that's about. What that is about is cultural wars and trying to set, again, one party against another, against certain people against another. And I guess, this is just more of the same type of rhetoric, the hate, the discrimination, the prejudice that's out there. I don't care who it is. If they want to go to war and protect me and my family and go overseas and risk their own lives and forsake even their own families, on our behalf, we are America, and I would say I give them my full support. I'm just really, really excited that this country, I think, is moving towards inclusion of everyone. And so, yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay, gotta cut you off. Jim?
I couldn't care less about the sexual orientation of any person. I'm tired of hearing about this. People are free so long as it's not harmful to another person, such as a pedophile or something like that. What do you care? What does anybody care what two consenting adults do? You know, we live in a country in which we espouse freedom. That's part of freedom. And I'm just over it. I'm over the entire point of putting these people in a position where they have to defend themselves. They shouldn't have to defend themselves. They shouldn't have to have pride parades. They shouldn't have to do these things. It's ridiculous. It's time to get this over and done with and move on and let them be the citizens that they are. Whether we are against them or not, they're still going to be have the same sexual orientation, and they may hide it, but I'm tired of it. Let them be American citizens the way that they should be. And you know what? If they want to fight for our military, by golly, let them fight for our military. You know what? If I'm in a foxhole with someone and they're shooting back at the enemy the same as I'm shooting back, it ain't going to matter a heck to me whether they're gay, lesbian, trans, whatever. I just want them there beside me to fight with me. And that's how I feel about this, and I'm sick and tired of it. And actually, I have been thinking more and more toward bringing out and revamping the old Equal Rights Amendment, only let's make it an equal rights amendment, not just for women, but especially for women, but let's make it an equal rights amendment that takes takes a sexual orientation, make it equal rights, whether for men, women, and sexual orientation. Now, I haven't totally developed this idea yet, but I'll develop it over time. Anyway, that's enough. I'm sorry.
So this is one more issue where it's a religious issue. We're not keeping a proper separation of church and state, and I don't care. I don't see why we allow men, we allow women. We are spending massive amounts of money on basically military technology that's essentially outdated already. Like this whole spending bill, what did we buy with it? It wasn't drone research. It wasn't how do we make them stealth worthy and stuff like that. It's like, no, let's just buy a bunch of stuff that by the time it's built will be obsolete. When the other things cost a fifth or a tenth of the amount. So like if we're wasting that much money, build separate facilities. I don't care. Like do whatever you have to. It's clearly there's no money issue involved with the military. So from that perspective, it's a separation of church and state issue.
I would just say, being ex-military, there are more pressing issues that the military has today than worrying about transgender issues.
Hear, hear.
And I won't go into that anymore, but we're overextended. We're in the places where we have no business. And quite frankly, I'm going to be very honest, if we don't change direction on what we're doing in the Middle East, we're going to be involved in a nuclear war. That's my feeling about it.
Okay. This is going to be a strange question. You really only have about 30 seconds for each one of you. What's been the most fun of this process? Most of you all are outside of Georgia running for the first time. What's been the most fun for you in this process?
I absolutely love meeting people. I'm a people person. I've been a part of the community leadership, I guess, to some extent in Muncie, Indiana. I'm the chair of Feed My Sheep, and we feed about 1,500 people every Thanksgiving, and then maybe about 500 at Christmas. I'm a founding member of Muncie Matters Police Alliance, and we're kind of a liaison between the community and the local law enforcement. So this is just another leg of that. So I've really appreciated meeting new people. I'm excited about representing the 6th District if I'm elected.
Same thing for me. The fun is meeting people, getting out there and talking to people, learning their feelings about things and what they want to see done and how they want the country to go and so on. And meeting Jeannine. Jeannine and I have become great friends. Meeting George. I know George's son. I didn't know that until tonight. And Joshua. And, you know, despite our differences on some issues, you know, I really enjoyed, you know, I enjoy talking with you. That's it, meeting people and getting out and being a part of the community.
Joshua, how about you?
You saying things about technology. That's been fun, because the barest minimum that I could hope for was to have people start to have a conversation about where life is at and where it's going, instead of just who's sleeping with who or just total BS, which is what politics have become, a reality TV show. And yeah, that's the bare minimum is starting to happen, which is really nice.
George?
Well, it's been an interesting experience in all the years I've been doing this type of work. It's been interesting tonight because this is the first time I've actually been in this type of a in focus forum, and that's been good. But I would say that whatever the outcome of this election is, as a person, I have to go on and believe by my actions too of what I believe in and what is good for America. I hate to use this word, putting America first, but actually that was my campaign slogan in 1988 when I was the Democratic nominee. And so that's not original with Trump or anybody else. That was mine. And that's what it is. We have to get back to the issues of people and not corporations and not political monies and political dynasties that are controlled by the special interest money, and that's what's killing the political process today. And that's why you're having gridlock in Washington, I believe.
Thank you all very much for being here. We are down to our last minute and a half. George Holland, Jeannine Lake, Jim Pruett, Joshua Williamson, thank you all for being here. Thank you for putting your name on a ballot. A lot of us talk politics, but we're not always willing to step out there and do that, and you have. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
This has been wonderful.
Sayward Salazar is representing the Wayne County Area Chamber.
Me.
It's been kind of quiet. We're going to have you back to ask more
I'll
questions.
come back, no problem.
Okay. Thank you very much. Couple of reminders. One, you can register to vote up until April 9th, so you need to do that. If you haven't done it, register online, indianavoters.com. Next week, our In Focus Candidate Forum is going to focus on the representatives the candidates running for Representative District 54 and 56. Tyler Vanderpool from the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce will be here, and he will be the host of the program. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking with the candidates running for Wayne County Sheriff, and then on the 26th of April, candidates running for Wayne County Council District 3 will be here on a forum. And we will also be here with you election night beginning at 6 p.m. I'll be joined by Melissa Vance from the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. If you missed any of this forum, it will be rerunning tonight at 10:30, also tomorrow night, twice Saturday, twice Sunday. It will also be available on our video on demand site, WCTV Online. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for the questions that came in, and we very much appreciate you being a part of this forum. We'll see you next week at 6 p.m. for another In Focus Candidate Forum. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.